Today's gospel contains a great paradox. While Jesus is humbly predicting he will suffer and die for all mankind, the apostles are arguing about whom among them is the greatest. Jesus is trying to teach them that true greatness is achieved by living a life that reflects selflessness, humility, and service to others. But the apostles are focused on using their discipleship for personal gain. We might wonder whether their personal ambition was the primary reason for following Jesus. Although the time of Jesus was a much simpler time, it is not very difficult to transfer his teachings about life and living into our own time. All we need to do is look at our American value system, a culture where more of almost anything is considered better. More power, more authority, more status, more money, more stuff. Sometimes we find ourselves so busy getting that we have no time for giving. And it's not all about financial giving. I'm talking about giving of our own unique talents, giving of our own time, and yes, when possible, giving of our treasure. If we ignore opportunities to serve others, we become like the apostles in today's gospel. We may want to share in the glory, the recognition, and the rewards of this life to the exclusion of the reward of eternal life. You know, I'll be the first to admit that today's teachings are a hard lesson. Jesus is teaching us to be humble servants. He even uses the example of an innocent child to bring home his point. He is telling us that greatness lies in humility, service, and self-denial, not in power or authority or in worldly possessions. You see, a little child has no power, no authority, no worldly possessions. So how do we live out this teaching? I can tell you from experience that there is no lack of opportunity to serve within our own community. It is a surprise to many that here on beautiful Cape Cod, we have individuals and families who find themselves in difficult situations. Here at Christ the King, we have a very active St. Vincent de Paul food pantry that feeds 100 families a week. In conjunction with the pantry, we have a needy case program that provides assistance to individuals who, due to unfortunate circumstances, find themselves unable to pay for the basic necessities of life. We have a very active thrift store that sells clothing and furniture at very reasonable prices. These are only two examples of ministries that provide service to the disadvantaged in our midst. And by the way, there is no consideration given to a religious affiliation. In fact, that question is never asked by any of our intake volunteers. And speaking of volunteers, all of the St. Vincent de Paul ministries are staffed by volunteers. Some pretty dedicated and committed volunteers. We all need to consider how our lives represent an example of Christ's love, compassion, and humility. I realize that this is a difficult challenge, if for no other reason than it forces us to step outside our comfort zone. But in the grand scheme of who we are as Catholic Christians, we are challenged to respond to this call to service. Today's readings make it perfectly clear. The ultimate inheritance is ours if we follow Jesus' path to humble service. But you see, faith without works is not sufficient. We need to practice both.